Okay, and welcome back, students taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications. And we're working on the theory videos for Chapter 22, Business Statistics. And I'm going to try to, normally I'm just rifling, I'm just talking and spitting this out, this information out, relatively quickly. I don't slow down and take my time and emphasize points. I mean, I just talk from what's coming out of my head, what I'm thinking about. But I'm going to try to slow down so that you have you can grasp, what's going on, because out of 100 people, 95 people struggle with statistics. Okay, so if, as I'm going through everything on the videos, if you don't understand something, watch the videos again. But definitely, if you're still not grasping it, definitely, contact an instructor, because like I said in the previous video, you know, everybody's going to see this again at some point in time, whether in school or in their life, and it benefits you to uh, have some idea about what is going on. Okay, all right. So let's jump over to our first concepts here, which are the mean, median, and mode. Okay, the mean. The definition is the sum of all values divided by the number of values. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, basically it just means an average. Okay, that's what that means. The mean is an average. For example, if I have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay, if I want to know what the mean is, okay, I'm going to add all of those values. So that's 9, 10, that's 15 as a total. So I have the sum of all values is 15, and I'm dividing it by the number of values. Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instances, okay, of those values. So my mean for this set of data is 3, 15 divided by 3. Okay, it's just an average. Um, you know, so for the most part, everybody understands what an average is. So this is kind of like nothing new to you, okay? But we're using different terminologies, and it's being presented in a little bit more stricter term. Um, yes, why do they use the word mean? Well, there's a reason why they use the word mean, and I'm not going to get into it, but just keep in the back of your mind that the mean, on the most simplistic term, means like an average. Okay? All right, so that's the mean. And as I was erasing this, the thought occurred to me. Realize that with statistics, you have to really learn everything and make sure you know everything from the beginning, because whatever you learn is at some point in time going to be applied to something else in the future. Let me just give you a quick example. Let's say you're taking American history, right? And chapter 1 is about the American Revolution, okay? Not Rove, Revolution, okay? Now, say chapter 2 is about the War of 1812. And then say chapter 3 is about the Civil War. Now, and I make this same analogy when I talk about financial accounting. And this is not about financial accounting, but if you're going to have financial accounting, um, this is the same exact thinking, okay? It applies equally to statistics. Because it's a history, we have American history, we all have a tendency to learn history through memorization. Okay. In other words, I read the chapter, I try to memorize it, I look up answers. Because why? Christopher Columbus discovered America when? Well, you go back into the chapter and look up Christopher Columbus, and you see the date 1492. Okay. When you're taking American history, you can treat it like it's a memorization, meaning I read through chapter 1 on the American Revolution, and then when I take my test, I'm taking it strictly on the American Revolution. Okay? Now, once I finish that test and I move on to chapter 2, most people forget about the American Revolution because they're done with it, right? They figure, oh, I'm finished. I don't have to remember any more about that because now I'm studying on the War of 1812. And they take the test, and when they take the test, it's on the war, only things that pertain to the War of 1812. Okay, so when they're finished with that, they move on to chapter 3, which is on the Civil War, and they figure, oh, I can forget all of that because now I'm going to only study the Civil War. I'm going to take the test on the Civil War. Okay? Well, the statistics is not like that. Okay, in chapter 1, American Revolution, chapter 2, War of 1812, and chapter 3 is the Civil War. Okay, now the way statistics works and accounting, you study chapter 1 and you're taking your test and it's on the American Revolution. Okay, and when you're finished with that, you can't forget about it. All right, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So then you move on to chapter 2, and now you're studying on the War of 1812. And you take a test, and it might only be on the War of 1812. When you do chapter 3 in the Civil War, you take the test on the Civil War, you're not just learning about the Civil War. Maybe one of the test questions says something like this: how does the economics of the American Revolution affect the Civil War? Okay, so with that kind of a question, oh, now all of a sudden I have to remember things about the American Revolution because it's being applied to the Civil War. Okay, well, that's what happens in accounting, and that's what happens in statistics here. I'm sitting here and I just gave you, the definition and an explanation of a mean. Okay, and you'll learn, when you're in the statistics itself, you'll learn about the mean, the median, and the mode, all in chapter 1. But guess what? Those three things are also used in chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 7, okay, chapter 8, right? So this is one of these things where if you're not getting this right up front, as you move forward in, from chapter to chapter, your grades are going to get worse and worse and worse, and you're going to become more and more confused and more lost, because what you're talking about in chapter 7, when you're talking about, say, normal distribution, well, to be able to use normal distribution, you have to be able to understand what the mean is, and the median, and the mode. Okay, you can't forget about it. All right, so as you go through learning this material, all right, sure, this is only one chapter, but like I said, don't forget about it, each concept, because you're going to apply the mean when it comes to standard deviation, and that's part of this chapter. When you're in statistics itself, you're going to learn about the mean in chapter 1, and standard deviation will be in chapter 3. And then you'll also use the mean when you apply to normal distribution in chapter 7. So if you don't get the mean in chapter 1, well, when you get to chapter 3 and you're doing standard deviation, right, there's no way you're going to be able to do standard deviation because you don't understand the mean, which is an underlying concept. And the same thing when you get to chapter 7 for normal distribution. If you don't understand the mean and the standard deviation, you're never going to get a normal distribution. Okay, so just be aware that this knowledge is cumulative. It's not, oh, I just learned one thing and then forget about it. Okay. All right, weighted mean, right, is the sum of the products and the sum of the frequencies. Okay, so when you have a weighted mean, sum of the products divided by the sum of the frequencies. Okay, so with a weighted mean, Some of the products means if you know, like if I have one instance of two things, two instances of three things, you know, this that's 2 and that's 6, and the sum of the products is 8. And then you have to divide by the sum of the frequencies. Well, the frequencies are 1 and 2, which is 3. So I would divide 3 into 8 and get whatever 2.3 something. Okay, that would be my weighted mean. Right. So it's the sum. Right. That means adding of the products. Well, a product is a multiplication somewhere. Then so here I'm adding, but this was the multiplication of the products. And then I'm dividing by the sum of the frequencies. This was a frequency, and this is a frequency being how many times that happened, and that happens to be 3. So I'm taking the 3 and I'm dividing it into the 8 and getting whatever. Okay, so that's what the weighted mean means. Okay, next is a median. Right, the median is the center of the data. Okay, it says, you know, we rearrange the data and then we find the middle value. Okay, so if I had data like 3, 1, 4, 7, 6, and say 9. Okay, well, what I have to do is I have to rearrange this information. I rearrange it so that it reads 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9. And now I have to find the middle value. Well, there happens to be, you know, 6 values here. All right. So when you have an even number of values, it's the average of the 2 middle values. Okay. So my 2 middle values are a 4 and a 6. Now remember, I have 6 numbers here, right? 6 instances. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instances. So I look for the middle. So I could take 6 divided by 2 and get 3. So I go over to 3. And I say I have a 4 and a 6. And it's the average of those two. So 4 plus 6 is equal to 10. And I divide that by 2 to get the middle. So my median, is 5 in this instance. Okay. Now, what happens if I have, let me just, so I can save some time here, and let me just throw in another number here. Let's say I put in the number 11. Okay. Well, then now I rearrange my values. Okay, so my values now look like this, right? 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9, right? And there's 7 instances of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so that's an odd number of values. And with the odd number of values, we divide the total number of the values by 2, and the next higher value is the median. So if I have 7 values and I divide by 2, right, that means I get 3.5, right? So I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm at a half here, so I take the next higher value, so my median would be a 6, and because I have of the odd number values. So my median is a 6. The easiest way for me to, when I think about that, let me get blue here. I have 6. Okay. When you have an odd number of values, the easiest way is just to find the middle number. Okay, see 3 on one side, 3 on the other. It's what's in the middle. Okay, but when you have an even number of values, right? Remember, we get rid of the 11 here. We only have an even number. Okay, what you're doing is you're taking, you know, what's in the middle here. So you add this plus this and then divide by 2, right? This plus this, 4 plus 6 divided by 2, and that gives you 5 if you have an even number. And that's how you find the median. Okay, now the mode is a value that occurs the most often. Just let me erase this. And let's say I have 2, 1, 3, 3, 4, 7, 2, 2, 6, 9. Okay, this is my data. Okay, the mode is the value that occurs the most often. Well, okay, how many times do I have a 2? I have 3 instances of 2. So 2, I have 3 instances. 3, I have 2 times. And then all of the rest, the 1, the 4, the 7, 6, and 9 only happen once. So my mode is the value that occurs the most. So in this case here, it would be a 2. That would end up being my mode. Okay. All right, so those are the first 3 very, very basic concepts that you need to understand about statistics. And remember, if you don't get this, you have to get it now, because as you move forward, it gets applied to other things. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop the video. And again, if you don't understand something, watch the video again. And if you still don't understand, feel free to contact an instructor. But I am going to stop the video and pick up with this here frequency distribution in the next video. Okay.